Wednesday marks 3 decades since the burning of the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas, that left more than 80 people dead, including dozens of children. The fire ended a 51-day standoff between the religious group and the federal government. The siege began in February of 1993 when the FBI attempted to arrest cult leader David Koresh for illegal weapons possession. That led to a deadly gun battle, leaving 4 agents and 6 cult members dead. Koresh preached the apocalypse would occur soon. He claimed to have more than 100 followers living in the compound, including his many wives and children. Exactly 2 years after the fire, 2 anti-government extremists bombed the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. It was the largest domestic terrorist attack in American history, killing 168 people, including 19 children. The men who carried out the bombing called it a response to the Waco siege. For more on this, I'm joined by Heidi Beirich. She is the Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of the Global Project Against Hate and Extremism. The organization focuses on exposing and stopping transnational hate and far-right extremism movements. Heidi, why was Waco such a defining moment and why has it lived on for so long?
Well, Waco happened just as the militia movement was starting to take off in the 1990s. And it was framed by people on the far right as an example of how the government was out to kill its citizens, essentially. And it became picked up throughout anti-government circles at that time as an example of the war that the U.S. government was waging. Involved things like taking guns from people. And the fact that so many people died became part of the victim narrative arising out of Waco.
So as we mentioned, then Timothy McVeigh brought that into his thinking that led to the Oklahoma City bombing. Can you describe how, so that was not that many years after Waco. Where are we now? How does this live on now? And what is it about Waco, or is it really what happened in Oklahoma City? Or what are the kernels that still live on that fuel far-right extremism?
Well, we wouldn't have had an Oklahoma City bombing without Waco. And the truth is, although that attack in Oklahoma was the largest domestic terrorist attack in U.S. history, we have had a series of far-right inspired terrorist attacks, for example, at a synagogue in Pittsburgh and El Paso Walmart. And when you put those together, we are actually living in an era of far more extreme right terrorism than in the 1990s. We have more white supremacist groups, more anti-government groups. Many of us think of January 6th and the convergence on the Capitol. So what began at Waco is a much larger problem today than it was back in the 1990s.
Whenever there's a conversation about far-right extremism, a lot of people on the right say, but there are protests on the left and there's burning in cities in America. Put the two, the left and the violence on the left and violence on the right, help us understand how they compare, if they do compare, just how one should think about them.
Well, we are living in an era of far-right extremism. If you look at the number of domestic terrorist attacks, the amount of people killed, this is all happening from the far right. And that's not just me saying that. The FBI has said that white supremacy is our #1 domestic terrorism threat, and several other government agencies. That's not to say that there isn't property destruction and other things that happen with left-wing groups. They just aren't killing people the way right-wing extremists are today. In earlier eras, 60s and 1970s, it was the left that was producing the most domestic terrorism. That's just not the case today.
Important context. Heidi Beirich, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.